Use the pockets throughout your day to create the life you want. It's funny. For many of us, we're not going to be able to have the luxury to sit down for months at a time to actually clarify our vision. No, we're going to be in our 20s already having to figure out how to feed ourselves and how to, we're going to be either working at school, we're going to be, or just working a job. Our time is going to be taken from us out of responsibilities to just survive. Especially as you get older, if you have kids, right? Your time gets taken away from you. Which is funny when you think about wealth and what wealth actually is. Wealth is actually being able to control your time and have your time for yourself. So that's something I consider when thinking about going down the traditional path of just having kids and a job. It's like, I'm not going to be wealthy because I'm not going to have control over my time to do what I want. I'm just going to lock myself down with commitments. And that's how I see it for me. But anyways, let's say you're in this scenario where, you're working a job and you don't know what you want. You don't know how to even, or maybe you do know what you want, but you don't know how to get there. You don't have the time. Well, here's where the rubber hits the road, is that you have to, first of all, redesign everything in your life such that you can maximize the time that you have, and even like things like, instead of going to the gym, figuring out how to do it at home to save that time, or, whatever commitments to sports or whatever you have, if you really want to focus on your business or whatever. But just not only that, but actually taking the small pockets in your day and the opportunities you have in your day to just move that needle just a little bit more. You see, my favorite jobs to work, other than, of course, my dream jobs and my jobs that are helping me use enabling me to use my signature strengths and my zone of genius, like speaking and teaching and whatnot. Other than those jobs, my favorite jobs are the ones where I just have time to work on myself. The best ones where I'm at a station, and then I can listen to something, even if I can have a journal in front of me and write something. I love that, I'll listen to a podcast, I'll listen to a lecture, I'll listen to, the content of of an educational YouTube channel that I know that I need to study and learn from, and I'll actually have a voice recorder such that I'm not always pulling out my phone, and I can just take quick notes, voice notes, such that I can consume large amounts of audio content and still extract the most important insights that I need to remember. And stuff like that. And I've been doing this with every single job I've had since my first job at 14, 15, 16. I remember, the memory that's coming up right now for me is when I was working at the Calgary Stampede, and man, there's some shitty jobs there, but one thing I've had was I was moved to a station where I was just doing, funny thing is, I was selling beer, but that job was so shitty because it was 3 hours on working and then 3 hours off, not paid, and then 3 hours on working again. And also the tips didn't match out because it was designed incorrectly, where there was vendors before, like, the people went into the stands, and then that they would spend all their money there at the bartenders, and there was a manual tip out of like $20 per shift, and people weren't even making that much, and people were like pulling out their own paycheck to get that tip out because they were too scared. Anyways, I found an opportunity in that job. Instead of just straight up quitting, I was by these recycling people, and I was like, fuck, like, you guys are just like sitting here all day. You guys sit here for 6 hours in the same spot, and then like every like hour or so you have to do like 10 minutes of work sorting bottles and cans. Fuck, sign me up, right? So what I did was because it was true, I should have told the person here, like, yeah, like, my wrists are really killing me. Like, I had wrist wraps and stuff. The pain was too much. Carrying like 30 pounds of beer, like, just all day in this tray that you had, and like people were fighting over the straps, and oh my God. But in that time, so now I'm in this tent where, you got like a few people there, and they're like bored as shit, but there I am, like, listening to lectures of Jordan Peterson. Now, I think this is like when I started getting more into Jordan Peterson. At the time, I haven't listened to much of him now, probably for 4 or 5 years now. I don't know, minimum 3, but I can easily see 5. But at the time, I was like, what, maybe 18, or probably 18 at that time. Anyways, I'm just trying to figure out exactly when that was. Regardless, I was listening to Jordan Peterson at that time, and I was using that time just because I had nothing to do, just chilling in this tent. And then every so often I would be sorting cans, and I would just go back to sitting in this chair and listening to this podcast. And at that moment, I was using those pockets throughout the day to move the needle just a little bit more into becoming who I came here to be. And that needle moving activity was simply just investing in cultivating the correct mindset. A large amount of self-improvement and self-development is just figuring out the mindset, because you're indoctrinated with all these beliefs and ways of thinking that you need to unwire all this shit by listening to like thousands of hours of just audios and taking thousands more hours of action into actualizing these thoughts, ideas, and beliefs. And I used that pocket that I had throughout the day to listen to those audios. And I'll have other jobs. I can't even list them all. I've worked over 20 jobs. And every chance I got, I remember this one job I had where you weren't allowed to have like a phone or anything. And I would have a notebook. You were allowed to have a notebook because, like, you can take notes and whatever. So I was writing a book in that little tiny notebook. Like, I was just deconstructing a bunch of my experiences around sleep in an idea to, in an attempt to write a book about how to sleep for those that are scared of sleep. Because I had a massive rat's nest that I had to unwire to figure out how the fuck to get this body to sleep. And deconstructing that experience was very valuable. And so in that time, I would spend just contemplating, that experience. And other things too, I would contemplate very specific questions for myself. I remember at other jobs, I would have a notebook, and I was like contemplating like the nature of pragmatism. And I remember like when I was in this, I remember like where I was when I figured out that pragmatism is like such a cucked belief system to like have as an absolute belief system, because when it comes to pragmatism is that you actually don't know what's pragmatic until you actually do it. A lot of times we will close our minds to things that we don't think is practical because we don't think it's going to work, but yet other people are doing it. So you got to open your mind now on figuring out why the fuck people will do certain things. What is pragmatic is a lot of times a function of how open or closed your mind is. If your mind is closed to something and you don't think it's pragmatic, then what are you going to do? And also, a lot of things you don't know if it's practical unless you actually go through it. So there's a lot of assumptions happening there. Anyways, a little bit, I'm kind of getting sidetracked with so many side topics here. So wherever it is for you, maybe at your job, you just have like one insight, you pull out a quote book before you go to your shift or whatever, and you memorize one quote from this quote book and you hold it with you all day, right? And then you're spending that time trying to embody that quote, trying to figure out where it applies in your life, and if you can have a notebook and you can spend time writing your notes, then consider doing journaling or writing practices or practices for developing more clarity in your life, or even making plans or brainstorming, whatever it is for your specific field, or even sketching or whatever. It really depends what kind of job you got here. And then also, especially those jobs where you can listen to music or you can listen to whatever, use that time to listen to the podcasts that are going to grow you, that are going to give you the ideas you need. So it is living this way, using your pockets like this in your day, that's going to help you inch yourself closer towards your goals. Then of course, eventually you'll be able to make design decisions in your life where you're taking months off at a time from work and you're working on yourself every single day. But in the meantime, before you have the opportunity, find those pockets and utilize them to the best of your ability. And that will help you move the needle just a little bit more. And I will say, this is something that has definitely been a game changer for me. Having this attitude with whatever the fuck I'm doing, always finding a way to be focusing on my vision somehow, some way. Because the most valuable thing we got is our time. And boy, if you haven't noticed, everybody's trying to take it away from us because it's so valuable. And that comes another thing, is taking away your distractions as well. Because, man, there's nothing worse than wasting your time just doing activities that are not adding to your life. So with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.